Welcome to Into the Unknown with Mike and John, Season 1, Episode 6. Coming up, we look to Washington, DC and flap our gums over a story from the early 50s. A UFO story. I'm Mike Duber.
And I'm John Fitzpatrick.
John, this is an exciting story. This one's in you. We're throwing this one to you, and what do you have for us today?
Well, I got to tell you, when I started the research for this story, I really didn't know how foundational it is to the history of ufology in America. Whether you're a ufology believer or non-believer, doesn't matter. This is the story. And I also didn't realize just how epic it would be.
Well, what a good choice for us. I mean, this is our first UFO story. You know, we've covered a lot of bases up until now, covered a lot of unknown territory, but this is our first foray into UFO.
It is our first close encounter with the UFO, yes.
Right, with UFOs. And, you know, I think that's a hint to the age of the story. Even though I said the 50s, right? We're still saying UFO.
Yes,
and not UAP.
It's not
yet.
UAP.
That's right.
But also notice it's not flying saucer, really. So something is changing in the midst of it, which again goes to the foundational aspect. And that's kind of interesting. Like I knew of this, obviously, or we wouldn't have been able to pick it. Mm-hmm. I knew people claimed to see flying saucers or UFOs over the nation's capital in the 50s. What I didn't realize at the time was that it's pivotal to the whole summer of 1952, and that people were changing their perceptions of flying saucers and UFOs, and really, it's no exaggeration to say that the UFOs over DC in 1952 set the tone for decades to come, and as you're mentioning, are still affecting our perceptions of them today as we go through yet another shift to this story, which is sort of symbolized by the switch in terminology to UAP. So we should set the tone a little bit. It provides some context, because this was not the first encounter with UFOs or flying saucers. Like I said, there's a shift, so something has to come before.
Sure.
Okay, so the flying saucer era, not UFO, flying saucer era,
right,
really began in June 1947. A lot of our listeners will probably know this already. When pilot Kenneth Arnold saw a squadron of silver ships flying in formation near Mount Rainier. But by 1952, the fledgling U.S. Air Force had amassed 615 reports of mysterious craft in the sky.
Wow.
Over 2 different investigative projects called Project Sign and Project Grudge. Okay. But the lid really blew off the pot in 1952. There were. That's not to say that things didn't happen between 47 and 52. Clearly they did, with some 615 reports. But something changes. Suddenly in 1952, in the whole year, the Air Force reports more than doubled. There were 717 made in that year alone.
So while we're still not far from stating terminology, you know, we're you know, I made a joke about it in the intro, but a flap, that's a term, that's a thing. Do you cover that later? Can we talk about that now?
No, well, let's talk about that now, because it's not really in the script, and so that's fine.
Okay.
So Kenneth Arnold sees UFOs. He sees flying saucers. Actually, he didn't even describe them as saucers. He said that
came from a journalist or something.
Well,
wasn't it?
he described the ships as more like boomerang shaped or crescent shaped. But the quote is that he saw them skipping like saucers.
Skipping like
saucers.
I think the press ran with that.
And called them flying saucers. But that's a single incident. That's a single sighting. And then, I'm going to get lost in, because I don't have all the research in front of me. But later, there's another incident that Arnold is, because he's the expert since he saw them, was hired to go investigate. That's another incident where people saw something. In fact, I think that was a crash, and I'll just leave it at that rather than be wrong about my UFO incident.
Yeah.
But there's
a series.
There are a series of incidents like that This is part of a flap. And a flap is closely related incidents seen by geographically similarly placed people. So it's when you see lots of things happening in the skies in a particular place, like DC, multiple people are seeing them.
Yes.
And they're all close together enough in time and place and person. And sometimes it's the same people.
Or the Phoenix Lights.
Right.
Back,
yes. Well, that's an incident. That's an incident.
Is it considered an incident because it was only over one? It was only like over several hours.
I would call that an incident because it really is confined to a night or two.
Okay, now we're getting definitions.
But others might defer on that and say that
where they're leading up sightings, or
Well, that we're going to discuss that here, and to some degree, and then how wide is the flap? Is the flap confined purely to DC, or as I try to put this in the context of what's going on in 52? How much wider and broader is it? So there's always some gray area about what's a flap and what's an incident. But at first, I think.
But it's a weird term, right?
Yeah,
To me, it's a strange term, and it just struck me that I think it's an Air Force origin term. I'm going to pin to look that up.
I did not look that up.
Like a flap of.
It's such an old term. I took it for granted, I didn't go to do the research on it.
Yeah, I think it's aeronautical. But anyway.
Okay.
Sorry, I've already dragged you off course.
No, that's all right. But that's all right. Let's talk about how far this flap that really exists by talking about some more context stuff here. So 1952, clearly pivotal year. In March of 1952, the U.S. Air Force opened the latest investigation into unidentified phenomena in the skies, labeling this version Project Blue Book.
What?
Yeah. What? Yeah, this is the one most people know. Sign and grudge for the real UFO nerds, ufologists.
That's deep cut. But
Project Blue Book is something that's familiar to most people. So Project Blue Book gets opened, and the Air Force put Captain Edward Ruppelt in charge.
His rank
Captain
is a giveaway there.
Captain Edward Ruppelt actually has a lot more access than I expected.
Wow.
And a lot more notoriety. But as this story goes on, I think we'll see that. Yeah. But yeah, I think you and I have some familiarity with this world. And Captain Edward Ruppelt is probably like all of 30 maybe? I mean, this is not somebody with a lot of experience. And in 52, maybe he flew a combat mission somewhere. Yeah. But this is probably not a guy with a lot.
Well, I never served, but I know a lot of folks that have, and a lot of times you hear them say, well, they put a captain on it, which tells you how important they think it is, which is to say not a lot.
Right. This is, and this is an Air Force captain, not a Navy captain, which is more, that is equivalent to a colonel in the other services. That's certainly somebody with lots of experience, responsibility, rank, but putting a captain in charge of a project kind of indicates that you're prioritizing this low if you're not familiar with the way that the military services work. So that's just interesting. But he does get a lot more access than I expected. So I don't want to discount him totally. It's
they need him to move. They need to move the guy around, but they just don't need to waste the time of somebody any higher. I mean, that's just practical, right? I mean, the military,
and I think they
has some, lots of ability to be efficient.
I think they do put somebody above the rank of captain in charge after him, which is also interesting. But even that would be even as the project gets deprioritized. But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Well, and we may not see the context of all the other projects and where it's situated with the others.
Okay, so anyway, so we've got Captain Edward Ruppelt, our first character in charge of Project Blue Book, and his civilian science advisor was, and this is another big important UFO name, Professor J. Allen Hynek.
Oh yes,
and he's an astronomy professor at Ohio State University, who was kind of a carryover since he did work on the two previous iterations of the flying saucer investigations. Okay. Now, out in the public, the excitement was palpable because flying saucers were everywhere. Just to stick to this timeline chronologically, on April 7th, 1952, Life magazine published the story, "Have We Visitors from Outer Space?" Now, again, I got to put this into some cultural context, too, because Life magazine, I think, still exists as an online presence now, but it's not particularly influential. But honestly, Life magazine was extremely important to the culture in 1952. We're talking the equivalent of this question appearing in a Super Bowl ad today. I mean, it really had that kind of projection into the public consciousness. Everyone read Life magazine.
I got you. Yeah.
And in this case, in this particular instance, it probably didn't hurt that on the cover was Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, well.
So this particular edition of Life magazine was probably also
she is so unique. She must be from somewhere else.
Widely read.
Widely read. I think it's
for the articles.
Life and Time, they have that same cachet in the Time, right? Oh, he made made Time, cover of Time, right? It's a big deal.
Yeah.
But where's you going?
Okay.
With that.
So another cultural touchstone to note, because we may want to pick this up again in the future, either today or in a future episode, is the classic 1951, so it's a whole year previously, science fiction film, The Day the Earth Stood Still. So if you're not familiar with the movie, first of all, you should be. Go watch it. But in this movie, the alien visitor Klaatu, let me say that again because I'm not sure it came out right. Klaatu, Klaatu, lands on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. to promote a message of peace. And of course, inevitably, he's shot by the U.S. Army. That's
right.
Just how it works. And, in 1951, the message of peace was also bound up very closely with why do you monkeys have nuclear weapons? Which I think is particularly poignant given the fact that we are recording this on the 80th anniversary of the Nagasaki bombing today.
Oh, well,
yeah, not to bring us all down, but this movie was very culturally important in terms of it being a huge science fiction film for the time. The message that it's promoting, that it's a touchstone for the common person to be thinking about flying saucers as an important issue. But most importantly to us, the movie posed a very important question for the viewer. If the UFOs really want our attention, why don't they just land on the White House lawn?
I've heard this before, and I've heard other people talk about this because that's not where the real power is. I don't know. I'm actually I realized I was blanking on what some folks have said. I mean, the idea is like, well, they just land on the White House lawn, makes the presumption that that's the only person, or that's who we want to talk to get things done.
But that whole question is a true cultural question that pops up all the time and has since then.
It's a good question.
This is really where that is posed. I mean, it's not posed as such in the movie, but the movie sort of leaves the viewer with that question so that it's an inevitable one.
Yeah.
All right, so that sort of brings us to 52. While the following story, the one I'm about to provide all the facts on, is often prosaically described as the 1952 Washington DC UFO Flap, or more poetically as the Washington Merry-Go-Round, after a then-popular DC Insider newsletter column, it's clear that the nation's capital was the focus of the activity, but the flap extended across the mid-Atlantic states, if not broader. I just pulled the information for the region because the whole theme for this season was Maryland ties, and DC is, it's not really Maryland, but it is.
Well, it's very technically.
Yeah. So, but there were things happening all over the Eastern Seaboard. So let me run through some of these bullets. On the 1st of July, 1952, 2 F-94 jets were scrambled to intercept a reported UFO over Boston, Massachusetts. On 12 July 1952, Washington National Airport air traffic controllers first spotted 7 objects on radar. Pilots also radioed the tower that they saw bright lights in the sky. The reports did trickle in overnight until Air Force jets scrambled to patrol the skies. They found nothing, although several ground witnesses said they saw lights fly away from the jets. On 14 July 1952, two commercial pilots, William Nash and William Fortenberry, $2, $2. $2. $2. I don't know. All right, Nash and Fortenberry
I think
reported.
That's the sound of it going right over my head, folks.
It's okay. It's okay. As long as it's funny to me, I don't care.
But you weren't even laughing. Was it that good a joke? I don't know.
I was looking at you.
That's unknown.
I was looking. Yeah, it was unknown. It's unknown. Sometimes it's the. It's
you want to
the,
explain yourself now that we've stopped the show?
No. All right. Okay. Nash and Fortenberry reported a whole squadron of 8 UFOs in formation over the Chesapeake Bay near Norfolk, Virginia. Researchers found some corroboration with several groups of ground witnesses, and this encounter was recorded by the latest of the U.S. Air Force Investigations Project Blue Book, who listed it as an unknown.
They knew we were going to call the podcast Into the Unknown.
2 days later, on 16th July, a U.S. Coast Guard photographer, that's Shell, R. Alpert, snapped a picture of 4 luminous objects in a V formation in the sky over the Coast Guard station in Salem, Massachusetts.
Okay.
That's the Salem.
Okay. So it's interesting. We're moving closer to the dates of the events in under consideration here. But I was curious, and I know we talked about it a little bit before. I had run across some information. We've been introduced to Ruppelt.
Yeah.
I've heard a story where in May, so a couple months back, while all of these sites are happening, right? Ruppelt reported being at a CIA lawn party. So this is basically at the home of a highly placed person in the agency. They're having dinner,
drinks,
probably Northern Virginia.
This is
outside.
a common inside the Beltway DC thing.
Sure,
Although
and
I don't
it's
think
May.
they have their
They're
Beltway
outside, but while they were all outside, he said they all witnessed a UFO part of this flap. So he's also quoted to have said, it's a call from these folks that got something to happen. So way behind the scenes where Ruppelt moves and lives and talks to all these people, he said even before, a lot of these sightings that you've just walked through, that they were already... So there was movement afoot.
So the other thing about the 1950s is we're in the middle of the Cold War. And it's just started.
Right.
And there's a fear that it's going to become a hot war at any moment. So even if you're not into little green men.
Right. You are definitely into saucers. Red men.
Yes. The CIA lawn party, the Washington elite, the political class, however you want to term them. They're all concerned that there could be something that is of national security concern here.
Sure.
And they're considering it the Russians more so than the Chinese at this point, but the Russians, the Chinese. Somebody might have something over us.
Is this pre-Sputnik?
This is pre-Sputnik.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's late
50s.
Late 50s.
Late 50s. I want to.
I could of the 60s.
I could look. I could cheat
and
look it
we're
up.
both in front of computers, but you know what?
Let's not
do that.
Let's not
Our
cheat.
brains just didn't have the information.
No. Maybe we'll look that up later, and I'll just drop it in. But it's pre-Sputnik. Yes. So that is a concern. So they don't know what's going on, and that bothers them more than anything, I think. And that's really what's going to set this off. So now, yes, we are at the meat of this story. So it's Saturday night, July 19th, 1952. Edward Nugent, an air traffic controller at Washington National Airport, saw 7 unexpected objects on his radar, apparently some 15 miles southwest of the city. This is generally considered the start of the incident. Nugent confirmed there were no known aircraft in the vicinity. He called his boss, Harry Barnes, over to the screen and said jokingly, "Here's a fleet of flying saucers for you." These objects were not flying any established flight plan. 2 other controllers were then asked to check the equipment, make sure it was functioning correctly, and they found it was working correctly. Nugent later said, "We knew immediately that a very strange situation existed. Their movements were completely radical compared to those of ordinary aircraft."
That has got to be really unnerving, right? Like, you understand this equipment, you've been trained on it, and then to see something operate so in such a amazing fashion must be really unnerving.
The other thing to keep in mind here is that we're talking true radar. Like it's beaming out a signal and it's bouncing back.
Sure.
A lot of
that's how radar works.
Right. But a lot of what is done today, again, my understanding, is less that an active radar as it is following the transponders of the aircraft they have.
I see where you're going.
In terms of air traffic control. So these guys...
It's almost go ahead. Where are you going with that?
Well, when these guys see something on the screen that's unexpected, their expectation is it is a signal bouncing back.
Right, off of a
off
thing.
Of something. Off of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because that's the way this particular equipment works. But it could be anything.
Right. It had enough of a surface plane of some kind to send the signal back.
Right.
I see where you're setting.
Yeah,
that,
I am, but I'm being deliberately vague. All right, so at that point, his boss.
Well,
Barnes,
I won't ruin it for you.
Okay. Barnes then called the control tower, because that's a separate entity at the airport at this point. And there they had 2 more air traffic controllers, Howard Coughlin and Joe Zacco. They said that they also saw unidentified contacts on their radar. So they may or may not, it's not clear if they're getting it off of the same dish bouncing the signal, but they are certainly getting the same readout.
Yeah, they're corroborating it.
Yeah. Moreover, because they could look out a window, they claimed to see a bright light in the sky in the corresponding direction. And it was at that moment that other contacts appeared on the radar screen and appeared to be moving in the direction of the White House.
Oh, dear.
And U.S. Capitol.
We have a problem.
And even back then, that was restricted airspace.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So that meant it was time to call the U.S. Air Force. Now, this was still the beginning of the Cold War. The U.S. government was just beginning to put atomic-age civil defense measures, such as early warning air raid sirens, into place. And incursions of unknown aircraft over the nation's capital were a serious concern to the military.
Yeah, and you're coming out of World War II. It wasn't that long ago when the homeland had, the civil, folks on the shore, looking for aircraft.
That is an interesting thread because the UFO phenomenon it's not in my notes here, but it's been in some of my recent reading. They actually did start up a whole Skywatcher civilian defense thing to be watching for Russian bombers or anything else unusual. And that may have in fact played when I said that they had such an uptick in unknown sightings and reports. That might be part of that. I don't know.
Sure.
But that's still that kind of thing was still going on because they didn't have a whole lot else to rely on at the time. Okay. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So Barnes reached out to Andrews Air Force Base, which is in the vicinity of D.C. And when the Air Force answered the phone, no one at Andrews saw anything unusual or unexpected on their radar. But no sooner had the call ended than the airman called Barnes back. They had a visual sighting.
No. It's getting serious.
Airman William Brady was looking at, quote, an orange ball of fire. This was at night, so it was not the sun. That took off
it's Venus.
At an unbelievable speed. Meanwhile, out on one of the national airport runways, somebody named SC, I love that, SC Pierman, a pilot for Capital Airlines, was waiting for permission to take off when he looked up and he saw what he thought was a meteor. Sounds suspiciously like
An orange ball of fire. Sure.
Yeah. The tower informed him of the unknown contacts that they were tracking. And Pierman reported he was looking at 6 white, this is the quote, white, tailless, fast-moving lights.
Tailless.
Yeah, so like there's no shooting star trail. I think is what he's getting at.
For a moment, I thought tailless, and I'm thinking, is he jumping to aircraft? But that makes sense.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
There's no trail in the sky. It's tailless. Got it.
Now, here's the interesting point. While the conversation continued, Barnes was able to collate this visual sighting with the radar contacts. Andrews Air Force Base now had their own unknown contacts on their radar screen. And this sparked an argument in the control tower about the source, because many of the airmen there were insisting the blips were a natural phenomena. And while others argued, Staff Sergeant Charles Davenport spotted, ready for this, an orange-red light to the south that changed direction.
Oh, that's Mars.
Yeah, well, changed.
Sorry. I put my military hat on.
Well, Hynek Hynek in this very same period is going around and getting all these reports about, I saw a red object in the sky. And he says, it's Mars. And they'll say, but it moved. And he'll say,
oh, no, it's swamp gas.
It's still Mars. Because there is an optical illusion involved in this sometimes. But, it's just funny you mentioned that. Okay, let's continue with our DC UFO flap. So it's still early in the evening on July 19th. Around this time, the radars at both National Airport and Andrews were tracking an object over a radio beacon. Okay, so they're not tracking it over the radio beacon. What they're saying is that they know where the beacon is located on the map, and the object appears to be over it.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just relative space in the sky.
Right.
Got
An
it.
object that suddenly vanished from all 3 radar screens simultaneously.
Okay. That is to say, it went very, very fast.
Yes. So the Air Force had not been twiddling their thumbs. They had actually called for some support, and it's about 3 a.m. when 2 F-94 jet fighters out of Newcastle Air Force Base in Delaware arrive, and all the contacts disappeared at once.
Oh, they bugged out, huh?
But when the jets left D.C., because they fly around and then they go back, the objects returned intermittently until finally vanishing with the dawn around 5:30 a.m.
So they
on
were
Sunday, July 20th.
So they were loitering for all that time for about 3 hours. Is what I'm. Is that what I'm saying? That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
The jets got there, flew around for a little while.
The jets got there about 3 a.m. Flew around for an undetermined amount of time, and then they left. And then the radar contact objects returned and continued to appear until about 5:30.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Interesting.
Keeping these things straight is important. All right. Later, investigators took witness evidence from others not directly involved in these events. Joseph Gigandet, and he was a U.S. Army artillery officer that was living around D.C. In fact, I think it goes into detail here. Let me read my notes. Joseph Gigandet, a U.S. Army artillery officer, claimed he saw a red cigar-shaped object over his house while sitting on the front porch of his home in Alexandria, Virginia, which, if you're not familiar with the area, is the town in Virginia right across the Potomac River from D.C. He said this object appeared at about 9:30 p.m. on the 19th. That's some 2 hours before Nugent spotted anything on radar, and was about airplane-sized with a, quote, series of lights very closely set together along the sides. And he described it as circling the area.
Interesting. That sounds very much more craft-like.
Yes.
Like there's more structure he's seeing.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what's seen the night of the 19th, 20th. But by some stroke of immense luck, Project Blue Book, in the form of Captain Ruppelt, remember him, was in Washington, D.C. for this event. However, Ruppelt didn't learn of the matter until Monday morning, July 21st, when he saw the newspaper headlines about this. So, of course, being a man of action, a military man, he leapt into action and asked for a staff car so that he could go around and conduct an investigation.
First thing he does is he goes for a process.
You know what?
And he says, "Give me the form. I need a car."
His job.
That's action man there.
No, let's be fair to poor Captain Ruppelt.
Oh, that's right. This is the Air Force.
This was his
job. He grabbed a pen.
This was his job to investigate these things.
He sat down at a desk and he wrote out a requisition form.
He got the well, if only because. Unfortunately, the Pentagon informed him that staff cars were for the use of generals.
Of course they did.
Senior colonels only.
Senior colonels.
Senior colonel.
You're
and
just
I think what I love about senior colonels is it's like it gives you some wiggle room to tell the newer colonels.
Yeah.
No, not today,
that's
sir.
not for you.
Sorry.
Nope.
They're all signed out. That's the part that kills me.
There's a bicycle out there.
Yeah. But they did helpfully.
Junior colonel.
They did helpfully authorize Captain Ruppelt to go hire a taxi on his own dime.
Because they have petty cash hanging around. They reached into the cigar box and handed him a 50.
No, it was
get a cab.
It was definitely on his own dime.
Oh, was it?
Which I'm pretty sure would be against the law because it'd be against the Anti-Deficiency Act.
That's right.
But
that's right.
You know that's neither here nor there because what is against the law these days? Who knows anymore? All right, so
I hear it's coming back into fashion.
Initially, Ruppelt considered the sightings to be very believable because there was radar data from several locations and corresponding visual identifications. However, as he did go out and conduct his investigation, as the logs and records came in, the chaos of the data began to create some doubts, both for himself and for the others of Project Blue Book. Only once had all three radar stations registered what appeared to be the same suspicious object, and then only for about 30 seconds. So somewhat deflated, Ruppelt returned to the Project Blue Book headquarters, I'm sure it was a couple of offices, at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. And his team argued over the radar returns, saying they may have been caused by temperature inversions that create layers of air, and that may have reflected the radar beams, and that would also explain some of the...
Had they done that before?
Apparently this was a known defect in the technology at the time.
That inversions would indeed cause a reflection.
Yeah, but there's a lot of question about that explanation that I don't remember if any of this is later in the write-up, but your question, there's a lot of argument about whether or not, because this was known, the radar technicians would have been in a position or skilled enough to weed that data out, to somehow calibrate the radar or recognize
or maybe even having the weather report.
Right.
We're going to have some inversions so we can dial back, what we're reading. Got it.
Yeah.
So there's okay.
So I mean, it's iffy. It's like in that gray area.
Technology, right?
Radar was pretty well understood. We're 10 years, at least 10 years on from its invention at this point, and it's not that hard a technology. Really? I mean, you can't give it to Stone Age man.
Is this akin? This is akin to like. He's a radar operator. Let's say he's been there for a year and a half. He's seen a lot of information cross the screen, visualized, and then he sees it on the screen, right? So it becomes an extension of his mind, right? Yeah. He knows when something's off in the same way that you're not going to tell a hunter, right, what a black bear is or is not, or you're seeing black bears. You know what I mean? It's that same idea.
I'm going to go along with that. Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
it would be really hard to tell somebody,
a radar operator like
what
you were
saw.
just seeing something, right?
Yeah, you're going to get that same reaction if nothing else.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So back to the story.
And
this is sort of just a quick hit. On Wednesday, July 24th, 2 Air Force colonels flew out of Hamilton Air Force Base in California, bound for Colorado. They reported seeing unidentified flying triangles.
Oh, now we've just upped the game, folks.
Quick hit. That's all there is to that.
Flying triangle. That's it? You're just going to leave us hanging there?
That's all.
Well, I'm going to leave us hanging for a few minutes while we stop and pause for a quick break.
Fair.
Yeah, so I think that's a good place to do it. Those ellipses are telling us to take a break. Okay. We'll be right back. So, flying triangles. You left us hanging on flying triangles.
I did. And it's sort of the first time I'm aware of anybody reporting flying triangles. But that's about all there is to it. There really wasn't a whole lot that I could find, at least currently, on that sighting. But it does happen smack in the middle of this week. So on Sunday, the first batch of UFOs have disappeared. Wednesday, elsewhere in the country, we got, boom, flying triangles. What happens next?
Wow, it's like the aliens are like, you thought that was cool.
Yeah.
You're going to be seeing these soon. We're just going to test them out.
So now it's Saturday, July 26th, 8 p.m., back at National Airport. And a National Airlines pilot reported seeing strange lights above his plane. This was followed by unexpected radar returns visible to both National Airport and Andrews Air Force Base. Air Force Master Sergeant Charles Cummings observed lights in the sky. He quotes as saying, "These lights did not have the characteristics of shooting stars." Mm-hmm. All right, so I think you may want to talk about this business as well. But initially I was trying to elide over some of it because it does get a little chaotic. But there's stuff going on at National Airport. So the press spokesman for Project Blue Book, Albert Chop, who I think is a civilian, and that's why there's no rank associated with him.
Okay.
He had arrived at National Airport, and as you can imagine, there are a lot of reporters around as well. Mm-hmm. So they started asking to take pictures of the radar screens, but Chop said, no, security concerns. And it's 1952, so the reporters took that seriously.
They were actually patriotic.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Well, I don't know if you have you ever seen the movie Them about the giant radioactive ants?
I have not seen that one. Sadly, no.
My daughter and I were watching this movie in preparation to watch Aliens.
Ah, okay. That's a good
there are a lot of similarities, but that's a different podcast. Anyway, at the climax of Them, the ants are found to be hiding in the tunnels underneath Los Angeles. So the military arrives, and there's a scene of about 5 minutes where the military is driving around with these loudspeakers on top of cars saying, "Please evacuate in an orderly fashion. The government is here to take care of you. Please evacuate in an orderly fashion." And of course, everybody just packs up and leaves Los Angeles while the military moves in to take care of the ants. And my daughter looks at me and it's like, would that have happened back then? I'm like, well, first of all, it's a movie, so who knows?
What year was that movie made?
It's made in the 50s.
Oh, is it? Well,
it's an atomic horror Cold War movie.
Yeah.
But I think it didn't seem as unbelievable as it might today. I'm thinking back to our Black Helicopters episode where, the helicopters are flying around Los Angeles, and you have to tell the people, don't panic.
Right.
It's just an exercise.
Don't loot the helicopter. We landed the helicopter. They took the skids off of
and
it.
There are still people saying it's not an exercise. They're here to kidnap you. It's just bad.
It's a different world.
All right, but did you want to talk about the press at all?
A little bit. I know that we briefly compared notes a little bit, and I had pulled in some of the higher wave top part of this story, which was that there was a press event that eventually came out. Is that the time to mention the press event?
No, the press event happens after the big one at the Pentagon.
Yeah.
No, that's later. That's later.
There's a big one.
You had a little note here on the side about the press at the airport.
Yeah, I was trying to fit it in, but at this time, really the press were locked away from the radar operators so that they could stay focused, for one. But there was some information that I ran across that the operators themselves believed, between them, right, this is going to blow the lid off this UFO story. They're going to look at our data, and this is going to come out. Everyone's going to be, informed about this. This is the moment in time. And then, of course, later on, they were surprised that, it didn't.
Yeah.
And, not only did it just sort of burn out, it was actively suppressed, right? The access to the radar operators themselves was denied, and a lot of the data.
So that's interesting, given
Yeah.
the way I read my research on this, and so I tell you what, let me read what I wrote based on that research, and then I'm going to circle back to the point I want to make. So this is what I wrote.
Yeah.
The radar reports were all over the place. Some of the objects traveled slowly, others flit across the radar scope at incredible speeds, and at that point, more jets were scrambled out of Delaware. Let me stop there. So in retrospect, I think what comes out is that people look at the radar data and they say it's chaos. Mm-hmm. When you're in the moment, if you're one of those radar operators, you're looking at that same chaos and you're thinking, well, how can we explain this? Mm-hmm. And I think this is something that happens a lot in these Fortean situations. When you're in them, there's a very different feeling from when some investigator who's removed from the event, looking back at it, says, it looks at the exact same thing and says, well, it's inconclusive.
Right.
And what was in the moment, they were thinking, well, this is it. This is the evidence.
Sure.
It just looks different later. It's the same data,
it's
but the
same
feeling is
so
different.
it's the I think it what you're driving at is, it's the Monday morning quarterback looking at the slow-mo play.
Yeah.
And saying in their minds or out loud to people watching, like, all the quarterback had to do was move his elbow 2 inches down and he would not have been deflected, right? Of course, to that quarterback in the moment, he had no concept that those 2 inches were there. His eyeballs are downfield scanning. And if you zoom in on something, you've removed yourself completely. You're looking at a vector in time that the quarterback had no ability to control, right? It was all reactionary.
The emotion being felt in the moment is different, and it's important. I don't want to sound like it was just emotion. The perception of the facts is infinitely different because you're getting one information stream, whereas later the data may look exactly the same, but how you're processing it is very different from a logical standpoint.
Right.
So there's a lot that goes on. So, but that's an interesting point to be made about any of these incidents or flaps or stories we tell.
Well, I think, frankly, that you have a certain group of people, and I think skepticism is healthy, but then you have the militant skeptic or the far, the very skeptical. We'll just say that tend to remove that emotion.
Yeah.
And frankly, it is one half of the story of the person that experienced it. So, and I think that's often removed.
So
to your point,
speaking as a skeptic, but as somebody who's still interested in these kinds of stories, I think that's unfair in that human beings are emotional creatures as well, and that part of the story shouldn't be completely removed. I think that needs to be considered as well when you do an investigation. You might still reach a skeptical conclusion, and I think some cases they do, but look at the emotional content and still reach a skeptical conclusion. But don't divorce the two, because the human experience is still there.
Well, right, and at the end of the day, and getting us back into the story, it was inconclusive.
Yeah.
Like, we just can't make a determination. There's weird things happening, but we don't know what it is.
Okay. So back to the narrative here, the timeline, the plot thread. So they've got the radar reports all over the place. They've called in the jets from Delaware. The jets were directed towards some of the objects on the radar, but nothing more specific than a few bright lights were observed by the pilots. Lieutenant William Patterson, there are a lot of Bills in this. Did you notice that? A lot of
Yeah, Bill's going to Ruppelt to pay for cabs.
Okay, yeah.
Williams. Yeah.
Lieutenant William Patterson attempted to chase some contacts, eventually radioing back. I see them now. This is his quote. I see them now, and they're all around me. What should I do? Nobody answered. Nobody could tell him what to do.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being him and imagine what he's feeling? In the
Yeah,
moment?
but
Wow.
back to the point about the emotion being important.
Sure.
More planes were sent as the original ones had to break off due to low fuel. But the new planes found nothing in the skies to pursue. The new pilots, really. Okay. So the incident rattled Washington's elite. The military tried to reassure the public, releasing a statement. Here's the quote. One thing I would like to do is dispel the belief of some that we are holding something back. We are not. But any confidence was shaken by a Washington Post article on the 28th of July in which a different spokesperson said, "We have no evidence they are flying saucers. Conversely, we have no evidence they are not flying saucers. We don't know what they are." President Truman had his Air Force military aide, Robert Landry. I just didn't get his rank, but he is presumably fairly
Yeah,
fairly
I think
important.
I ran across him too.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
He is. I know he's a military member. He is an officer or enlisted. I suspect an officer, and he may be lower ranked than I expect. He might also be a captain like Ruppelt, because apparently that's just like
Right.
that's what you do is you send them over there. He had Robert Landry call Project Blue Book and get an update directly from Captain Ruppelt, but the president lurked on the call. So this is, I mean, given the technology, literally you're talking about an image of the two men in the White House on different headsets, handsets really, and only, I guess because the
He was on the extension.
He was on the extension. The president didn't want to spook Ruppelt, so he had Landry do all the talking, but he's listening in intently. Ruppelt repeated the information he'd been provided, so he does not have any firsthand information. The radar returns might have been caused by temperature inversions. When this happens, a layer of warm, moist air covers a layer of cool, dry air closer to the ground, and this can cause the radar signals to produce false returns. We talked about that radar technology earlier. A signal goes out, and it bounces back off of something. And while you would think usually that something is a solid object, it just has to be solid enough to the RF signal for it to bounce
Well, and
back.
that's where you can dial in, I guess, the what returns I wanted of a particular size, because the surface area is going to dictate what you get back.
Yes, there are ways to do that. Although
you could
I'm
sort
not
of-
a trained radar operator.
Well, yeah, but we can get the sense that you're getting various things coming back of various sizes.
You should be able
Plane size things will let in.
Yeah.
Anything lower than maybe a meter, you just weed it out, and you have a knob that controls the sensitivity.
Right.
Is what I'm thinking.
Right.
I'm an immediate expert. You know where I spent the night last night?
Yeah,
Right
exactly.
here.
Exactly.
I'm no smarter than I was yesterday.
I'm on the internet, so I am
That's
an
right.
expert.
I'm a podcaster, for Christ's
God's
sake.
sakes, man. I'm a podcaster.
I'm a genius.
I know nothing. Okay, back to the story. Ruppelt, however, had not interviewed any of the witnesses himself or conducted a formal investigation. They're still getting data in to Project Blue Book, so he likely didn't sound as convincing as he could have at the time.
Well, he's only a captain.
And he's only
He hasn't gotten that lying part down
that
yet.
poor man. Okay. So according to CIA historian Gerald Haynes, the Central Intelligence Agency, that's what CIA stands for. Did you know that? Okay. They
I
reacted.
saw you spelled it out, and I
did.
was like,
I was
what?
like, what? Yeah, reacted by
Really?
forming.
Is that what that means?
The CIA reacted to all of this by forming a special study group within the Office of Scientific Intelligence and the Office of Current Intelligence. Now, I think of these two. I don't think either of them still exist today. I think they've been renamed and reorganized.
Yeah,
Okay.
reorgs are every 5 years.
Every 5 years. Pretty
That's
much.
as much as I'm going to say.
However, I will note that the Office of Strategic Intelligence is what Steve Austin, the $6 million bionic man, worked for on that TV show.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. I think totally separate. Anyway, I just wanted to bring him up again in relation to the Sykesville Monster Bigfoot episode.
Oh,
I think we dropped it there.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Man, we were
Gen X
throwing a
rules.
pass
Anyway.
all the way back to episode 1.
I'm just trying to find the tie-ins.
We loop them in, man. We loop them in.
Yeah.
I love it.
If you found this episode by itself, hey, there are more.
That's right. There.
And if you've been with us since the beginning, it paid off. Okay, so the CIA's Office of Scientific Intelligence and Office of Current Intelligence formed a special study group. The primary concern was that an adversary could be deliberately creating a UFO incident to induce public panic,
like a psyop,
creating an opportunity for a sneak attack. Okay, the secondary concern that seems to be unspoken is they might be behind the actual things in the sky that we're seeing, but that doesn't seem to have come across in this. Okay. A memo from this group was sent to Walter B. Smith. He's the DCI. That stands for Director of Central Intelligence. On September 24th, 1952, with the following analysis. So this is the quote. I'll tell you when it stops. Do you want to read it?
I can read it.
Yeah, why don't you
Sure.
read this? I need to have a drink, and you
Sure.
you haven't read anything.
So again, this is a memo from this group was sent to Walter B. Smith, the Director of Central Intelligence, on September 24th, 1952, and this is the analysis. The flying saucer situation have national security implications. In the public concern with the phenomena lies the potential for the touching off of a mass hysteria and panic.
Okay. This is an important moment because this is really the first time that the CIA has a group together, but it's not the last. Eventually, this initial finding gave way to a more formal working group the next year, formed in January 1953. It's headed by physicist Howard Percy Robertson and therefore is known as the Robertson Panel. This is a big deal and probably worth its own episode at some point. But when we reach that point, because
Okay, we'll put
it's
it
not
in
really local.
We'll put it in the backlog.
But yeah, it might pop up again in other ways. But this is a big deal. The key takeaway from the Robertson Panel for now is that the panel examined nearly all the UFO cases in the military reports over the course of several days, not weeks, not months, but days. And determined none of them represented anything unusual or threatening to national security.
Figure it out in a couple days. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
That's quick.
Well, again, not
They're
in
really
here.
good at this.
Yes, they were that smart. Now, this was a top-notch bunch of people. It did include
It just
Professor.
represents, they're all out smoking and joking, and there's a guy in the corner going,
It did include Professor J. Allen Hynek.
Fog.
Yeah. Hynek, who, of course, is not that far away from giving the infamous swamp gas explanation.
Swamp gas,
Hynek-
Mars, swamp gas,
Venus.
swamp gas, Mars, Venus. Yeah. Drunk, hillbilly.
Hynek himself was appalled at the fact that this only lasted a couple of days and that they basically just kind of showed cases on a screen and they read through the file briefly and they came up with a cursor. Because really all they were supposed to do was come up with the answer of, this is not a national security concern.
Right, that's right.
That it was a predetermined outcome in many ways.
Sure.
He felt at that time.
Sure.
And this is the guy who's assigned to be the scientific advisor to the Air Force.
He's like, I'm retiring in a year.
Yeah. And based on what I know of how government works and the fact that this only took a few days and that methodology, I can't say that I disagree with him. The recommendation was for the U.S. Air Force Project Blue Book to spend less time analyzing UFO reports and more time actively and publicly debunking them.
That's a good idea.
They wanted to strip UFOs of any aura of mystery they had acquired. Sound familiar?
It does. It does. But we Well, we can judge them, but also, in the era, the time, what was happening,
Yeah.
stories are messy, people are messy.
People, yes. They're one of my favorite things to say. People are messy. Yes. And stories come out of people. I do have one last crumb to drop, and then maybe we can go back and pick up some threads that I mentioned and you might want to tie off a little. All right. So to end the summer of 1952. On September 12th, 1952, a meteor streaked across the sky, visible to those in Maryland, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. That night, in Braxton County, West Virginia, two young brothers, Edward and Fred May, and their friend Tommy Heyer, said they too saw a bright object in the night sky, and they claim they saw it crash nearby on a neighbor's farm. After collecting a few more of their friends, their mother, and an older cousin who was a National Guardsman, they went in search of that crashed object, only to be confronted by a mysterious creature now known as the Flatwoods Monster.
What?
But that is definitely a story we'll tell in a future episode.
Wow.
But I want to bring that back into the fact that this all of 1952, these things are happening. Was that the first close encounter of the third kind or not? I don't know. But we've definitely got these close encounter type things going on when the pilots are within a few feet of things. Well, they say a few feet, a few yards, meters. They're close enough to see some stuff. But nobody actually says I see a flying saucer. I do want to point that out in the whole story.
But we do have the triangle, so that's interesting.
Yeah,
I find that interesting.
But that's somewhat separate. That's arguably part of the summer for sure, but it's arguably not part of the flap. Since it happens farther west. But I when I ran into that, I'm like, that's interesting because it happens smack in the middle of the two weekends, in the middle of that week. And it is another incident in that summer time frame that's clearly a very active time. But I need to be upfront. It's arguably not part of the flap. The rest of these things I think are arguably part of a flap if you consider the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, all to be of a piece when you're talking about creatures or things that might be in the sky visible for hundreds of miles. And
more visible than
traveled millions and billions of light years to get here.
Well, or they just slip through a wormhole, a portal.
Still, I mean, what's Salem, Massachusetts versus Washington DC when you have craft that can travel?
Oh, sure, quickly. You're there. You're there in a blink of an eye. So. I'm just curious though, the Flatwoods Monster. Are we dipping our toe into that at all, or is that truly just for the backlog?
That's really for the backlog. Okay. Yeah. We'll need to put that into a future episode. That is really worth its own episode.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of interesting stuff, but I think we need some time for that one too. If you're desperate for more information about the Flatwood Monster incident with the latest and greatest information, I'll point you at the Astonishing Legends podcast, which recently did like 2.5 hours or so on this, talking to some of the people who are still alive. I mean, like I said, when they're kids, they're young kids in the 50s. So they're around. I mean, they're much older, but their stories have not changed much. And in some cases, they are going back to a simpler version of the story than what has conglomerated onto it over the years. Which is another interesting point about these stories, is that often the story hits in some kind of media format, news format, dies down, people come back to these stories, people like us who are just interested in the weird, and they start writing books, and things get put into the books that aren't quite right.
And you can't retract it easily.
Then you have the next generation who refers to the books, but not the people who are in the incident.
Grown. By that time, it has moved beyond the original. Oh, you know what? That's funny. There will be, that's a recurring theme in a lot of this.
Yeah. I think you were even suggesting that we should go back and do some cleanup on some of the things we've already discussed in a wrap-up or retrospective episode.
I
think that's accurate. I found
Yeah.
some things I'm like, oh, maybe I should have mentioned.
Yeah. I think we can. I think we can ghost the idea of a retrospective at the end of the season, and we come together and we sort of do a good old hot wash of how did we do? How did what went well for us? But yeah, more to come. We'll talk about that for sure.
Did you?
Yeah, I just to because I know you're aware of it, and I would actually I can just kind of question you and see what your thoughts are. But the little bit of wave top looking that I did, there was a press conference in this time period, and it was billed as the biggest press conference since the ending of World War II.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of characters there that we certainly would run across.
Yeah. Do you want to? So you're right.
Refer to my notes. We've got Samford and Ramey, our two Major General John Samford.
I did elide over that a little bit because I didn't realize how interested you would be per se, and I didn't think it would necessarily add much to the story, but. Especially since I did give the takeaway that they weren't very comforting. But when I described, let me find this business again. Yes, the incidents rattled the Washington elite. Okay, when I said the military tried to reassure the public and released a statement, that's really the press conference. So when you have one UFO sighting one weekend and the press goes crazy, that's one thing. The press is like, it's July in Washington. It's post 4th of July. The August recess for Congress is coming up. Things are slow. It's of course they're going to go nuts. But when you have two, now it's a problem.
You got to say something.
Yeah, you got to do something. And like I said, it's the beginning of the Cold War. The military is upset. So they do hold what is known to be the largest press conference since the end of World War II at the Pentagon, specifically on this topic. And, they go out and they try to... They're not as polished as they are today with their press statements, I guess, when you have these generals... talking to the press, and they were not convincing. They told.
You mean in their lying? Is that what you mean? When they're like the fabrications or the way they put it forward?
I guess,
they weren't convincing.
I guess they weren't convincing in their confidence that this wasn't a big deal.
I see. But you also have a very gullible is not the right word, but trusting. You've got a trusting populace that can almost be fed.
Yeah. Well, when
anything.
I said we have no evidence they are flying saucers. Conversely, we have no evidence they are not flying saucers. When you say stuff like that, you may be telling the truth.
I just shine the light on one other piece of information that I came across in June of that year. Ruppelt, who we're familiar with, Captain Ruppelt of the Project Blue Book, attended a meeting with the Air Force Technical Center headed by Major General John Samford. This was the
same guy,
the general that delivered the message at the Pentagon. The Air Force and the Navy and others were there, but apparently an Air Force colonel stepped forward, spoke up, and made the complaint that the Project Blue Book staff were biased against the ET hypothesis. And that was poking Ruppelt in the eye. So basically, there were those in the room that were like, we're looking at extraterrestrials, and they were annoyed that, I guess there was another faction, which is something that I think is well known, factions within the military, right? It's not a unified thinking body.
Right.
You've got factions.
There are always competing ideas.
Sure.
On any
depending
topic.
on who's the general or the the
it's
admiral
not a
at the time. It's
Correct.
not a monolith. It doesn't. Yeah. I mean, they don't think monolithically. But there was internal strife. I thought that was interesting. So that was something I found and wanted to throw in there and see what your thought was. Well, I mean, just to get your reaction. It doesn't sound like you're.
I mean,
thinking one way or the other, but this is pretty typical.
So we're also, it is typical. We're early on in the UFO phenomena. They were just so Project Blue Book was beginning to popularize that term UFO, which did sound a little more official or government speaky than flying saucer. That sounds very dismissive. There were a lot of questions, and I think they were trying to be open in some cases about we don't know what we're dealing with. I think they were telling the truth in that they hadn't really seen any overtly aggressive indications off of any of this phenomena, whatever it was. I think they were fairly confident that it wasn't a human adversarial action. Based on even the
it was a phenomenon, but not human.
Right. That it wasn't the Ruskies flying their bombers over DC. So they didn't know what it was, but they didn't. They could say with confidence, we know what it isn't, and it's not the Ruskies. It's not the Reds.
Yeah. I mean that's akin to what they say today.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not.
And people are not as. They're not as open to that concept today either. They just assume that that the government is hiding something else. The Air Force or the Navy is hiding something else that they do know, or that they're hiding it from themselves, like you said, different factions. That there's a group that's read into some program that knows more than the bulk of people who are now out here testifying to Congress.
Well, that cracks open a whole other world.
Yeah.
And around this time, you've got majestic information and. These different eras start spinning up.
We should probably
as we move forward. Sure.
We should probably do Majestic at some point too. That may or may not be actual government disinformation. Who knows? Is that tied up with Richard Doty or not? I don't think it is, but I think it's so tied up with some other.
I don't know. That was well before Doty.
Yeah.
I mean, and not to say that there couldn't be some continuity there, but yeah, who knows?
But there, I'm trying to find some information on there. When I say there was nothing aggressive, that's not entirely accurate, in that there was an Air Force pilot who was chasing a UFO. Let me feel.
Are you separate from this? Separate from the DC Flap?
Yes, and I'm trying to remember what
he
year,
was
if it was
killed.
before. Mantell.
Yes.
So yes,
he was killed.
He was
in
killed.
The pursuit. Yep.
Yeah, he was killed in 1948. But again, there's no evidence that it was aggressive towards him. And I know so let's assume that what I'm about to say is accurate and had evidence associated with it, and that's why the Air Force might say what they did in 1952. There was no evidence in the crashed plane, which was recovered, that it was shot, rammed, anything like that.
Yeah.
It appears that he was chasing some object above the flight altitude for the craft for his plane, which was a P-51 Mustang. So this is one of the old propeller-driven.
Oh yeah.
Classic World War II fighter planes.
Right.
They only fly so high before you crash out. And the other thing was, I don't think he had oxygen systems in his plane. So at a certain altitude,
passed out. The engine
out.
crank conked out, and down he went.
Right. So the story sometimes gets told that he had an unfortunate encounter with a UFO. Yes, I suppose that's true, but that sort of leaves one with the impression that the UFO shot him out of the sky. That does not appear to be the case based on the evidence.
Well, it sounds like there's lots of room for interpretation of what happened.
Yeah.
That there's a wide range.
The other thing that seems to be okay. So again, if you want to believe the official stories as they develop over time, there were basically spy balloons. This story goes back to the Roswell explanations as well. There was a whole project of spy balloons that were floated up into the atmosphere and then over on the prevailing air currents towards Russia. The entire intention was to pick up some trace of radioactivity, indicating that what the Russians were doing with their nuclear tests in this time period. And we didn't have satellites, so this was the best way to get something. And
they were, they didn't want the public to know about it.
Right. This was all highly classified.
Yeah.
So this is a case of the right hand not knowing what the left hand was doing in the Air Force. The other thing to keep in mind is in 48 we didn't have the U-2 spy plane, so there was nothing else that was high altitude that could do this. These balloons were not. When I say balloon, people think like the kids blow it up. No, these are huge. Yeah. Like I saw a graphic depiction of the balloon in doing the research on UFOs recently, where it's like the height of the Empire State Building. Now it's not as massive in any way, shape, or form, but the balloon trail is that kind of height with the spy package at the bottom, trailing underneath. So it would be an unusual sight. And apparently what has come out in the decades since the Mantell incident is he may have, in fact, been chasing one of those, that he may have been sent up because...
So it moves fast?
No, but it would be moving...
I get you.
It would be moving at an altitude much higher than he could climb
So
to.
he's thinking that I can go get this thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's maybe much because of its size and the fact that there's nothing around to judge by its size.
Right. Yeah.
It may be much further away than he thinks in 3 dimensions at the same time.
Sure.
So there could be a perspective altering effect going on at that, where he thinks, oh, it's moving so fast away from me. He's just much further away from it than he thinks.
And it's way up there.
And he's climbing way too high. And so that's a distinct possibility. The Air Force
It seemed to me like there was more to that story, though. It wasn't just, hey, there's this thing and it's there and I'm watching it and, I think I'll just go decide to chase it. I seem to remember more to that story, but I don't want to bring in too much information without... I haven't heard anything about that story for a long time.
The Wikipedia brings it up. It says, in 1952, Project Blue Book identified the object Mantell pursued as a, quote, skyhook balloon. That's the series of balloons I'm talking about. A top-secret project that he would not have known about at that time. So if the...
And they're not going to tell him mid-flight either. And if they can figure it out, they're not going to know either.
They're probably not going to know on the ground either. And he was an Air National Guardsman, so again, a little bit further removed. Yeah. So if we accept these facts as true on the face, then presumably the Air Force officers at the Pentagon providing would also have that background knowledge of, we haven't seen anything that's aggressive. So and some of these things we now know are us chasing our own tails. There's a whole thing that starts to happen in the 50s, a little later than this because it's still sort of in the design stages. But there's a graph that shows the UFO reports going up at the exact same proportion the U-2 airplane gets test flown.
Well, it's not. I mean, it's not a big surprise. I don't think you're telling anybody anything really earth-shattering there.
No, and
something's in the sky flying that we know what it is, and people are looking at it and saying, "I don't know what it is, so I'm going to call it unidentified."
And there's
not a big surprise there.
There's an interesting track between the Cold War and UFO reports on all kinds of fronts. It's not just, and they're just different threads of a big tapestry. That there's Cold War stuff going on, there's flying saucer stuff going on. Some of it's related or weaves back in. Some of it is completely unrelated, but it all is part of that same tapestry about the culture and the history that's happening.
Yeah, there's just a lot to sink your teeth into. We've even talked around the idea of the chicken and egg of, okay, well we've made a movie about it, and now
Yeah.
we start seeing it? Or
Yeah.
is it that we have seen it and now that's influencing the movies? But what else is at play there, right?
Right.
Is it something that we're pulling out of something even more mysterious that, some collective consciousness that is guiding us, right? We
Yeah.
are collectively seeing it because we create it consciously. I'm setting up the next podcast.
Yeah, I know what you're doing. I can see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well,
So we're gonna, and we need to
And that's-
we need to pull the plug on this. We need to batten down the flaps on this one.
yeah, I think we're about done.
We
Yes.
are here,
Yeah.
but there's so much to. I think, John, thank you for doing the research on this one. It's an interesting story, and I think you have effectively opened the door for all the different paths that we could wander down
on
rabbit
UFOs.
holes. Oh yeah.
There's so much
Yeah.
more we could talk about. And,
Oh,
and
yeah.
clear connections to stuff regionally.
Oh yeah.
And then from there out to other places as well. When we,
Yeah.
but we are trying to focus and then open that aperture.
Yeah, and I'll even throw out there, my one personal experience is really an amalgam of, I would think, and a sighting from this, which is
Yeah.
and I'll just pin that, the weird unexplained thing, the one and only weird and unexplained. Well, maybe it's not the only one, but this most significant one for sure. But we have that in the backlog too. So you've got a lot to look forward to out there if you're listening, and if you are enjoying yourself, there's more to come. So until next time, this is Mike and John signing off. And remember, we love reading about this stuff and going into the unknown. If you don't have time, just keep listening to us. See you next time.
Bye.